Joining me now live to discuss is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Fellow at the US Studies Centre, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Here we go again, and now on the country's National Day. How long can this possibly continue?
Danica, good morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a sad day, but it's a fair question. And my guess is it will continue for quite some time. The culture is breaking down here. The morality is breaking down here. And at the same time, American citizens enjoy the greatest freedoms of probably any nation in the world. And when you combine those two things, a lack of morality, a lack of community, a cultural breakdown, with tremendous individual freedoms, you're going to get days like this. And my guess is it's not going to change anytime soon.
It's clearly a very deeply divisive issue. Is there at all any genuine appetite for gun control changes in the US?
No, and in fact, folks like myself will point out who are opposed to severe restrictions on our constitutional rights regarding weapons is that Chicago actually has some of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive, rules on gun ownership in the country. So folks like myself and folks on the right of politics in our country will point out and say, look, this is proof that simply changing the laws won't fix anything, that sick people, demented people, guys who post videos about shooting up schools, which I understand this person of interest did, they're still going to be able to get guns. So the question is, are you going to limit the freedoms of other law-abiding citizens at the same time in order to not solve a problem? So it's going to be the same sort of discussions that we've had here for a long time, but I do not see it changing anytime soon.
Joe Biden spoke a short time ago saying that he will continue to fight gun violence. What are his options here?
Not very many. The Senate, I believe, has passed a bill. I can't remember if it passed the House or not before the July 4th holiday, but there was a bill that did pass out of the Senate that made some restrictions on age, for example. I don't know how old this person of interest is, but maybe that person might have been impacted by an age change and so forth. But it's really very little that an executive, that a president can do. This is up to the legislature. It's up to the House and the Senate. And again, we've struggled with this issue now for a long time. That being said, the Second Amendment was the same in the 1940s and 1920s and 1980s. It's only now that we're seeing these more and more. My guess is the Second Amendment isn't changing. The country is simply changing.
Mick, I want to ask you about the January 6 hearings now. We've, of course, heard a mountain of evidence over the last few weeks. Do you believe it is possible that the committee will make a criminal referral against Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's likely. I think that was part of the plan from the beginning, is that, it's not a court hearing. It's not a legal proceeding. This is a political process. The committee is made up entirely of Democrats and then two Republicans who really don't like the former president. So it was, in my mind, a foregone conclusion that would be a criminal referral on something. That's not the interesting question, I don't think. I think the interesting question is, will our Department of Justice, which really is in the business of enforcing the law, it's not a political show trial, it's the real deal. If our Department of Justice decides to make a criminal indictment or convene a grand jury for the purposes of conducting an investigation, that would be a watershed moment. I don't think that the committee they're certainly not unbiased. I think they're probably going to go ahead and make that criminal referral, which doesn't count for much. But whether or not the Department of Justice proceeds is the thing that a lot of folks here in the United States are watching right now.
Yes, I guess that remains to be seen. Overall, though, I mean, from what we've heard over the last few weeks, how does this paint the Republican Party and where does it leave it?
Yeah, it doesn't really, and that's a great question. I get that, I do media all around the world, and I get that question, and it's sort of hard to explain, but this seems to be a Trump-specific sort of thing. It doesn't seem to be having any impact on the midterms. It doesn't seem to have any impact on some of the primaries that we're seeing. We're in the middle of primary season as the parties choose their candidates for the general election in November, and the needle is not moving very much, while the opinion of the president is changing, the former president, President Trump. So while I think a lot of folks around the world ask, is this going to affect the midterms? The answer is no. Could it impact President Trump's ability to run for re-election in 2024? I think that's a more interesting question. The answer is maybe. We'll have to wait and see how the next couple of hearings go. But certainly right now, this looks to be specific to Donald Trump. Not very good for him, not impacting the Republican Party, so generally good for them.
And just finally, I want to ask you about the midterms coming up. How do you think that the Democrats overall are looking? You know, I guess Joe Biden's come under a lot of criticism in recent months. Do you think that that will have an impact?
I think that Bill Clinton, a great Democrat president, once said it's the economy, stupid. Most folks here vote with their pocketbook issues. They vote with the issues that affect their families and so forth. And while the Democrats will try very hard to make an issue out of abortion, an issue out of guns, right now inflation is really the big issue. It's too expensive to buy gas here. It's historic. It's the highest 4th of July holiday ever in terms of gas prices. Food prices are outrageous. Housing prices are outrageous. And I think the Democrats are simply not going to be able to get away from that. They're going to try. They'll try and make other issues central. But right now, what's driving the politics in this country, as it is around the world, is the economy. And the Democrats are not faring very well on that, including President Biden.
Another interesting day in the US. Mick Mulvaney, lovely to speak with you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Danica.